בשם השם נעשה ונצליח, שיעור תורה, ברוכים הבאים, חברים יקרים. We are back here. I'm going to start, Be'ezrat Hashem, a new series, a series that surely is going to ruffle some feathers, surely is going to, Be'ezrat Hashem, bring a lot of light to the world, light that has existed in Judaism since the beginning, since the time of Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Surely this is a light that unfortunately is relatively dim in the world when it comes to the issues of kedusha, or as the world knows it, intimacy. But holy intimacy is, as we've learned, in the past, is a world of difference. Tonight's shiur is going to be for Refuah Shlema for Rabbanit Levana Bat Sarah, Rav Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah Bat Anat, Avimori David ben Nesria, Imimorati Doris Bat Jora, and also for a Atzlacha Rabba for Marsha Bat Julie, Ayla Bat Marsha, Samuel ben Marsha, Cephas ben Marsha, and Louis ben Marsha. Tonight's series is something that we've thought very, very deeply about, whether to give this series, whether to teach this, whether not, which we'll go into in a moment, because this is something that simply does not exist in the world of English speakers, or at least not one that I've heard of. The only thing that you can find are things that unfortunately are publicizing filth and things that are considered toivat Hashem, the abominations of Hashem, even if sometimes those lectures will be given by people that call themselves rabbis. Unfortunately, these rabbis that write their books with co-authors that are former or current porn stars, all types of people that are learning from the televisions of the world. So surely this is not the way of Torah. So this is something that is a Be'ezrat Hashem, a very, very much needed subject, and Be'ezrat Hashem will go into it. Now, before we start, I want to remind everybody that the best way to watch our lectures, if you want to watch them live, is by going to the website bh.live. That's a place that you could watch the lectures live on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. Since we completed our series of the Iggeret Hakodesh, we're now going to have our Tuesday nights designated to this series, which perhaps we'll call Jewish Intimacy. And Be'ezrat Hashem, this is something that you definitely do not want to have any type of distraction. You want to pay attention. You don't want your mind to go elsewhere, not to foreign places, and not to simply to confusion. When it comes to this particular issue, a person has to really, pay attention to the details, because the details are what makes the difference between a Jew and an animal. Now, so watching it on BH Live, bh.live is a place where you're not going to have any distractions. Of course, we're going to continue publicizing these lectures on the Facebook channel, simply because it allows us to reach new audience. But for those of you that are not able to watch live, then watching it on our app is certainly the best place. The Be'ezrat Hashem app you could download for free. You go to the App Store on Google or on iOS, and you just look for the words Be'ezrat Hashem, B as in Be'ezrat, E-E-Z-R-A-T, and then Hashem, and you'll find our app very quickly. Baruch Hashem. Thousands and thousands of people are on the app already, and many of them say that it's much better than even YouTube. And of course, you could always find us on our YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed already, certainly it's a good place to subscribe, where you'll get our updates each day with new films and new lectures that we publicize each day, short ones and long ones. And last but not least, the best way to get updates, aside from following the pages on Facebook, is also to join our WhatsApp groups, because there, many of the questions are answered in regards to what's going on as far as current events with the organization. People that are asking about the major event that is going to take place in Yerushalayim next month, or in the month of August. As I've told you, this is going to be a huge event. We haven't finalized the date, but I'm looking forward to getting the final date in place later this week. We had a meeting with the team yesterday, and it truly looks exceptional. The place that is possibly going to be it, and everything is something amazing. I highly recommend. Maybe I haven't made this apparent yet, but I highly recommend whoever can attend the event. You certainly have to attend this event. It's going to be an event unlike any other. The amount of kedusha that will be in that room is going to be unlike anything else you've ever seen. If you live in Israel, and even if you live somewhere else, and you can travel to Israel for that week or for more, to attend that particular event, it's certainly going to be worth it. There's going to be major Rabbanim, the Gdolei Hador are going to be there. Some that I've told you about already, like Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, Rav Ephraim, Rav Gidon Ben Moshe, Rav Yaakov Zamir, our own very dear Rosh Kollel, Rav Sharvit, and others. I myself will also be there. And it's probably going to be anywhere between 500 and 1,000 people there. All of you are invited to come. The only thing I need from you is to let me know that you're coming, so we could actually put you on the list, because if you're going to come, we have to account for it and pay for it. So don't tell me you're coming and you can't come, or you're not really sure you're going to come. If you can come, please let me know you're coming, and we'll be happy to let you in. It's not going to cost you a penny to come. It's something that is definitely worth it. Now, aside from that, we also have the raffle. The raffle is on our website, tikkunhabrit.live. Tikkunhabrit.live has a couple of different options to donate for the Tikkun Habrit movie, but also for the new USBs that we have. We have 8 new USBs with the new Tikkun Habrit USB, alongside 7 other USBs that have hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of Torah. This is by far the best tool I personally have ever seen in the Kiruv world, and I'm not saying this because we produced it. I'm simply saying it because I've looked at a lot of the tools that have been used over the years as far as Kiruv. These are by far the best thing I've ever seen. The way they look, what's in them, and how appealing they are to the average person that's out there, or even to your average religious person. It could certainly help anybody get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and change their life and transform it in ways they could never imagine. Just in the last few days, we got many, many letters from people of how the lectures are changing their life. One guy was a former drug addict, is Baruch Hashem now learning Torah every single day. Another guy, Baruch Hashem, has already left his non-Jewish partner and is now in a kollel for a few months. People are really transforming their lives in many, many different ways. And even the times where people fall off, they always know they could come back, and they reach out to us, like somebody did today, telling me that he was did Teshuva 3 years ago with us and was going strong for the last 3 years, but over the last 2 or 3 months, he got much, much weaker. And Baruch Hashem, he contacted me. I gave him some chizuk to give him some ideas of how to get back. And of course, the way to get back is the same way that we got on in the first place, which is to commit to learning Torah, to watching our shiurim. Of course, you could always read books. The combination of books and our shiurim can help anybody. And when I say anybody, I literally mean it, because one of the ways that has actually helped me uncover this particular entire series is going to be based on a sefer that was written by the Ramban, Nachmanides, approximately 800 years ago, about 750 years ago. And this sefer, I actually was not aware of it for my whole life until a few years ago. A person that translated it to English, who was a very big chacham, Rav Yaakov Bar Nachman. He contacted me and he said he's watched some of my shiurim and appreciated what we talked about when we talked about the issues of wasting seed and kedusha, and he told me that he actually took it upon himself to translate this Iggeret Hakodesh, which is the sefer that was written by the Ramban, the letter that was written by the Ramban to one of his talmidim, some say to one of his sons. He actually translated it about 8 years ago to English. And it was very hard to get the sefer, and I always like to have a sefer both in English and in Hebrew. simply because to double check everything is always good, but also to let other people know if they can get it. The only problem is the Sefer is very hard to get. It took me months and months to get a couple of copies of it. And if you can get it, I highly recommend it. I don't think that the average person will truly understand, as much, in what's actually written here, if they simply read it by themselves. Hence the reason why we're doing this lecture series, because you'll see that each and every sentence of the Ramban is something to be, something that out of this world. There's a lot of kedusha, a lot of amazing things, similar to what we did with the Iggeret Ramban, which we had several dozen lectures about that letter that he wrote to his son. This is Iggeret Hakodesh that talks about the issues of intimacy, between a husband and a wife, and how to bring holy neshamot, how to bring holy neshamot, into this world. Intimacy is known by all. Unfortunately, literally by all. You have children even know what intimacy is, that they find out on the internet just by simply having freedom from their foolish parents on their phones. And kids that are literally not even teenagers know about what happens between a man and a wife, and people bring kids to the world, and simply they think that this act is an act that doesn't really require much thought, doesn't require much effort, and then they're surprised that they have, kids that are, more inclined to worship an idol, more inclined to go against God, more inclined to heresy than they are inclined to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this I'm referring to all people, not just religious Jews or non-religious Jews. I'm literally talking about all of mankind, because this particular topic, as the Ramban himself mentions, actually has to do with all of mankind, meaning Jews and Gentiles alike. Of course, there are different levels and different things to do, but the point being is that Jewish intimacy is one of the greatest kept secrets in the world today of promiscuity, of grossness and filth and simply disgusting things. So, when we came out with the lectures about wasting seed and the movie, we couldn't imagine how it was going to help people. When we did it, we knew that it was a needed topic, but the amount of people that it's helped do Teshuva has been more than everything else combined. It's just one of those things where people that are religious, not religious, old, young, rabbis, avrechim, Baalei Teshuva, women, men, Jews, non-Jews, everybody that has watched those lectures, and especially the film Tikkun Habrit, has had a major, and applied it, has had major impact on their life. Just yesterday, I got an email from a young bachur that grew up in the Yeshiva world of modern Orthodox, if you could still call it the Yeshiva, because according to the lawyers and the government, the Yeshiva University is not considered a religious organization, according to the recent judgment that came out against them. But nonetheless, this young man grew up in a modern Orthodox world, and was not only not aware of the significance of the sin of wasting seed and immorality, but was actually, when he first learned about preserving himself and not wasting seed and being holy, his friends made fun of him, and different people in his community told him, "What are you talking about? Even the holy people of the Torah, chas v'shalom, a million times, but even the holy people that are mentioned in the Torah used to waste seed and were promiscuous and so on." I'm not really sure if they even teach things like this in public school, but nonetheless, apparently they teach this in modern Orthodox schools in some places. Not all, of course, there are always exceptions. But nonetheless, the key is to understand that in the world today, there is a lot of confusion. And the reason why we came out with these USBs is because we want to bring clarity to people that are looking for clarity, to bring them truth when they're looking for truth. And the people that take that truth and apply it to their life, it transforms their life. one story after another. Anyone that watched the recent lecture, not live, but as the repeat the following day, we were able to add some pictures of letters that we get and text messages that we get. If you simply stop each time it has a letter on the screen, you'll see how these people have changed their lives, how they've transformed their lives. You know, people that were drug addicts, people that were homosexual, people that were simply going in the wrong way according to all standards, transformed their lives and are happy for it. But again, it's one of those things that is a person needs to know already. It's going to have a lot of evil inclination. And one of the greatest things that we ever had the merit to be part of is to have these new USBs, because these are tools you could literally give somebody to help them do tshuva. And as the Gemara in Masechet Sukkah says in countless places, but there's apparently a couple of pages that are just simply full of it. You could just put your finger on there and it talks about it. It says, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught in a Berita, that the acts of kindness are greater than charity. The acts of kindness are greater than tzedakah regarding three matters, where charity is performed with one's property, whereas the act of kindness is performed both with a person himself and with his property. Charity is given to the poor, whereas acts of kindness are performed both with the poor and with the rich. Charity is performed with the living, whereas the acts of kindness can be both with the living and with the deceased. Now, why are we talking about chesed versus tzedakah? Because when you are sponsoring these USBs, and whether you're going to give them out or you're going to allow us to give them out, doesn't really make much of a difference. We'd actually prefer for you to give them out. But the key is that when you're doing kiruv, when you're helping somebody do tshuva, you're simply giving them a USB. You're not just doing a charity that you donated some money to get the USBs, but you're doing the ultimate chesed. The ultimate chesed, the ultimate kindness that is actually helping another person get closer to Hashem. And not only that, the Zera Shimshon writes that, when a person does tshuva, if he's a normal person, he's typically going to do a tshuva that's based out of fear. He's doing tshuva, he's changing his life because he doesn't want to get punished, he doesn't want to lose money, he doesn't want to have a bad life, and so on and so forth. And therefore, all of his intentional sins will turn into accidental sins, meaning that he still has to pay for them in the real world, in Olam HaEmet, in Gehenom, in so many words. But nonetheless, it won't be as bad as what it would have been if he didn't do tshuva. But if he does tshuva from love, then all of his sins, including the intentional sins, turn into mitzvot. Just imagine how many sins the average person has before they discover what they need to do in order to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And all of those sins turn into mitzvot, meaning he's probably going to have more mitzvot that came from sins than the mitzvot that he actually performs, normally, even if he's, once he becomes religious. So how does that happen? How does somebody do such a thing? Especially when Rabbi Nachman Breslev says that he wishes that people of his generation would simply do tshuva from fear. Because tshuva from love, like where the Zera Shimshon is talking about, is not realistic for most people. So how does the Zera Shimshon say that you can do tshuva from love? Simple. Do kiruv. Help other people do tshuva. That is the absolute highest level of kindness that you can do, and therefore it's the highest level of expression of love that you can express to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which will transform all of your sins into mitzvot. This is the reason why I always tell people that have the means to donate to Kiruv exclusively and not to waste their time and money and effort on donating for their basic things that are needed in their whether it be in some friend or family member or other things that are not necessarily urgent. Sometimes people like to buy a Sefer Torah. That's a wonderful mitzvah, but if you have to decide whether to buy a Sefer Torah or use that $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 to do Kiruv, certainly doing Kiruv will give you a lot more reward, because the Sefer Torah may yield you some mitzvot, but the only thing that I know of that can turn all of your sins into mitzvot is actually doing Kiruv. So the key is that when a person goes on the website tikkunhabrit.live and sponsors $1,000 or more of these USBs, they're in essence putting themselves in a situation where the Gemara talks about them, and they say that this is a person that's greater than all. This is a person that's greater than all, so much so that Shlomo HaMelech says, this is a person that HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls him a star. So it's and again, whether a person ends up donating the money and giving them out, or he just donates the money, that's up to them. Of course, the more effort you put into it, and the more regularly you actually do this, the more it's going to affect you in a positive way. But nonetheless, a person could literally by themselves a greater olam haba from helping others do tshuva than even from their own mitzvot. Of course, you have to have the merit to do all of this and not just the money, and therefore you yourself have to do tshuva. Everybody has to do tshuva. Everybody has to repent and get back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and do what they need to do. But the key is to know that when a person spends their time, their effort on helping other people do tshuva, they're literally doing themselves the greatest favor in the world by helping other people get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is why the Gemara says in the name of Rabbi Elazar, the charity is rewarded only according to the kindness which is performed. As it says, sow for yourself charity and reap according to the kindness. Meaning that a person is that could easily give some money to his local shul, to a local synagogue, to a local kollel or yeshiva or anything else, but it all depends on how difficult it was. How much effort did you put into it? Again, when you give a CD, when you give, now it's USBs to people, and you actually are giving them something that can truly help them get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is the highest level of love, highest level of effort that is necessary out there, simply because you're taking something that's a tool that can help this person get closer to Hashem in a single shot. And the beautiful thing is about these USBs is simply because they are making that effort much easier because of how much siyata d'ishmaya they had in the making. Now, with that being said, we're going to get started with this extraordinary series. It's one of those topics that is requires an enormous amount of siyata d'ishmaya. So no sins will come in our way, no mistakes will come from us, and Be'ezrat Hashem, this can help a lot of people. In the beginning, we're going to talk about why even do this, why take the risk of discussing this topic that many run away from. Just like when we did our lectures about the issues of morality, the issues of wasting seed and immorality, surely there were many, and still there are many, that go against it, despite the numbers speaking for themselves. The Tikkun Habrit movie is now approaching 10 million views across our channels, and certainly has helped thousands upon thousands of people do tshuva and get closer to Hashem. But yet, if you ask your average rabbi to talk about the issues of intimacy, either they're going to start stuttering, or they're going to give you a book, or they're simply going to run away from you. And the times that you're going to see it on the internet, you're going to see impure people like Shmuli Boteach or Manis Friedman, all of these heretics talk about the topic with such comfort. You're not really sure if they're Jewish or not Jewish, or whether they're reading one of these filthy blue magazines, or they're actually reading something from the Torah, because there's not much of a difference. The key is to understand that we're talking about a topic that is relevant to every single person, whether you are a Jew or Gentile, whether you are young or older, whether you are single or married, because the issues of intimacy are, of course, part of our life. And while we would think that this should be a common topic, among Klal Israel, although it is in the books a very common topic, it's in every tractate in the Gemara practically, you'll see that there is discussions in some places about the issues between a man and his wife as far as intimacy, different stories about it, different things we'll go into. So it is discussed very widely in the Gemara. It's discussed very extensively in the Zohar, by the Chachamim, by the Poskim. The Rav Ovadia Yebia Omer discusses it, the Ramban discusses it, and all others, the Shulchan Aruch. It's all across the board, and of course, anyone that watched our lecture from several years ago called, I think it's called Kosher Intimacy. It's about a 55-minute video. Sees that there is a lot of laws pertaining to this, and it's a very interesting topic nonetheless. But yet, if you look at as far as speeches, It's very few, and even when there is, it's usually a exclusive private event. It's not necessarily a public event. Now, it's important to know what's at hand here. It's important to know what has to be considered, because when it comes to the topic of intimacy, when it comes to the issues of immorality, the concern is always that, number one, it's going to lead people to sin. If you have a 15-year-old boy or girl listening to a lecture that talks about intimacy, naturally you would think, oh, this is going to create those thoughts in their mind, and those thoughts are going to lead to actions, whether those actions are going to be with themselves or with somebody else, and you have yourself Sodom and Gomorrah. So naturally you would think that this is something that you should run away from, like it has become, unfortunately, the custom, where many do run away from it, even though the poskim talk about it extensively. But one of the things that we learned from Rav Ephraim and through Rav Mordechai Neugelshel, that once there was a lecture that he gave, that he said that the topic of the Holocaust is a very sensitive topic. And of course, the horrors that happened during the Holocaust are unimaginable. It's simply something that even when you hear the stories, it doesn't really do it justice. And it's hard to imagine what happened over there. It's hard to explain what happened over there. And he says that if this topic of the Holocaust, that of course created questions for certain people, doubts by other people, strengthening of emunah for others, and all types of things. But if this particular topic was agreed upon all, not to talk about it at all, then we would agree, meaning the religious community would agree, the rabbis would agree not to talk about it at all. But when you have the heretics, the reshaim, the people that are looking to uproot the Torah, not only talk about the Holocaust, but add not just historical events, but more so their opinions, and taking the opportunity to distort the Torah and ask all types of questions like Amalek does, which create doubts that where was God during the Holocaust, and how could he do this, and how could he do that? And when you have, Rav Neugelshel says, when you have these heretics out there that are speaking about this sensitive topic so openly, so vehemently, it obligates us, the religious community, to also discuss it and thereby defend the Torah itself in the eyes of the public and explain every single detail of not only where was God during the Holocaust, but the fact that he was there and he's the one that did it, and he already told us he would do it 3,300 years ago. The key is to know that there are topics out there that certain people would shy away from because they're afraid that it could lead people astray. And the Holocaust is one of them. Needless to say, the issues of morality is a topic that many English-speaking rabbis run away from. I even have seen certain rabbis in different organizations that wanted to talk about the topic, and in some cases actually spoke about the topic, but after they published it or wanted to publish it, were influenced by the board or influenced by some rabbis or Erev Rav, whoever they were, to remove these topics, to remove these lectures, to remove these books from their from everywhere. Why? You don't want to bring people to sin. But says Rav Neugelshel, if the only place that you could hear this topic would be in the books of truth, fine. But since you have heretics talking about it and distorting it, we have to defend the Torah. Needless to say, when it comes to the issues of morality, since the world is full of zima, it's full of prostitution, it's full of promiscuity, it's full of heresy when it comes to the issues of the relation between man and his wife, the relation between the Torah itself and women altogether, the responsibility of men, the responsibility of women, what is really right, what is really wrong. Since the world is full of confusion, we have to talk about it. Hence the reason why Rav Aaron Kotler alav shalom, says, chas v'shalom, that the world will feel freely to act promiscuous, and we, the Bnei Torah, will be shy to talk about this topic when it connects to the Torah. Since this particular topic is called holiness, it's called kedusha. There's a reason why it's called kedusha. Of course, it's not called kedusha because there are simply two animals that have two legs that come together and they have a baby, a little pug. No. The kedusha is because the act itself is supposed to be holy. But what does it mean it has to be holy? What do you have to put a kippah on? You have to wear your kisui rosh. You have to pray before it. You have to have an open chumash. What does it mean to have a holy act? What does it mean to bring a holy neshama? And the key is to understand first and foremost that it's important for us to talk about this topic because unfortunately, there is no other way for the vast majority of the public to find out about this topic because most people are not going to pick up a book from 800 years ago and learn about it. More likely they're going to pick up a book that was published a few years ago and a book that's full of kfirah, that's full of heresy, a book that's full of promiscuity, a book that in essence is trying to tell people that it's perfectly fine to be like a rooster. It's perfectly fine to do all types of things that people watch in pornography. It's perfectly fine to be some beast. And the reality is, Rabotai Karim, the average person is not going to find out about this topic on their own. And when they do, they'll be sadly disappointed or simply misled, or both. And this is also when it comes to the religious community, not just the secular community, because many times when people are very preserved, very reserved, they keep their kids in a sheltered to a certain extent, so much so that many times I've met holy people that really just simply did not know things that your average 7-year-old public school kid knows. Today, unfortunately, your 7 and 8-year-olds know more than the 70-year-olds of the previous generation. I have students of mine that are teachers that tell me what's going on in the public school system, and needless to say in the Yeshiva system today, and it literally brings tears to my eyes when I hear these things. When you hear that there are 8, 9, and 10-year-olds that are raping other 8, 9, and 10-year-olds in their public school, Hashem Yirachem. When I hear that one of my students is a teacher, that although he's in a public school, he has a dress code, and he requires his students that are going to attend his class to be modest. He doesn't want them to act like beasts. And one of the parents came to complain against him because he said, "How dare you tell my daughter what to wear, and how dare you tell my daughter that you're not allowed to touch her and shake her hand?" This, unfortunately, Rabotai Karim, came from a parent today. Literally the exact opposite of normalcy is what's happening in the world today. Now, of course, many people are surprised by the ruling of the court that obligated Yeshiva University to accommodate the homosexual filth that is inside their yeshiva. But of course, all of us know that this is their own doings. It's not something that came for nothing. This is their own doings. They did it to themselves, and now they're crying about it. And the reality is, when you teach heresy, when you teach things that are against the Torah, when you accommodate filth and allow this filth to be among your so-called yeshiva, that's what you're going to have. And of course, this is not going to end here. It's just going to simply grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And unfortunately, if they would change the name from Yeshiva University to simply University, I think it would be more appropriate, simply because of what's happening today. Perhaps they can change the Ephraim Goldbergs of the staff and start bringing Judaism to it, rather than having a co-ed school that allows pretty much anything to go in this so-called yeshiva. And of course, there's also the ruling that came out in the last few days of how in America today it seems like a positive act, of how there is a new ruling that simply is allowing nearly half the states in America to prohibit abortions. This is certainly a positive act for society. if this would continuously grow. But of course, the society is fighting this because people want abortion, because abortion allows them to be promiscuous. Abortion allows them to be murderers without having any second thoughts. And if it was simply just a few people, you would think, oh, okay, this should get better over time. But unfortunately, the public in general is losing their mind when they're hearing about how you're not allowed to have an abortion in over 20 states. They simply have no idea, and they're looking for every type of solution under the sun. CVS, the drugstore, just announced that they are not going to limit the Plan B pill of promiscuity permission, practically. They're not going to limit anyone that wants to buy more than 3. They can buy as many as you want, just to make sure that you can be as promiscuous as you want and not have to worry about it. This obviously is a disaster. You had one of the Congress members, this Reshait that backs Planned Parenthood, the murder empire. She wanted to put abortion clinics in national parks. In national park, can you believe going to some national park and right next to the bathroom there's also an abortion clinic committing murder legally? Can you imagine such a thing? But this is in Congress. This is in the government today. And of course, if this was only in the Gentile world, we wouldn't even mention it. But unfortunately, it's also in the Jewish world, where people that call themselves rabbis actually write articles about how they're so disappointed in the U.S. government and the legal system that is now forbidding the abortions because abortions are perfectly fine, and this and that, because according to them, the exception is the standard. Meaning, they're going to say, listen, but what if a woman gets raped? What if there's incest? As if there's incest in every house and in every neighborhood, and it's every single girl that gets raped is coming from incest. As if everyone is getting raped, they're making the exception into the standard. And of course, Chilul Hashem, desecration of Hashem's name, is running rampant. If people knew what kind of punishment they're going to get for the desecration of Hashem's name that they're doing, for either promoting this abortion or promoting homosexuality or promiscuity, or even silencing those that speak the truth. If they simply knew even 1% of the punishment that they're going to get and what they're bringing to themselves, they literally would not even want to wake up and get out of bed every day. There was one time, and I've told you guys this story perhaps a couple of times. There was one time a guy that wanted to bring a speaker to speak about the topic of kedusha, to speak about the topic of holiness in Judaism. And we were involved in this particular event, let's just say the least. And one of these clown rabbis got in the way and said, no way, this is never going to happen. This is not appropriate for our synagogue. It's not appropriate for our community. And it wasn't a few months before that particular rabbi got testicular cancer. And again, some people say, well, yeah, but how this and how that? There's no coincidences. The Gemara in Masechet Chulin says, even the finger of a person does not get hurt without there being a bet din in heaven judging that he deserves it. So a person needs to know that when it comes to the issues of kedusha, when it comes to the issues of holiness, this is a sensitive topic, but thereby also being a necessary topic in our days. The Chafetz Chaim, in the Sefer called Kol Kitvei Chafetz Chaim, all of the writings of the Chafetz Chaim, in the 3rd volume, page 77, he himself writes how when his son was already an early teenager, he came to him and told him, listen, it is time that I teach you about the issues of morality, the issues of how there is a seed that comes out of your body, whether it's it's not just during marriage, it's also sometimes involuntarily as a result of things that you look at, because I want to warn you against wasting seed. I want to warn you against immorality. I want to warn you against even looking or thinking about the wrong things. And this is the holy Chafetz Chaim that most of the people in the world think he only taught about Lashon Hara, thinking that he only taught about this topic. But the Chafetz Chaim covered the entire Torah, Baruch Hashem, And the more you learn his topics, the more you learn his Torah, the more you realize that he literally covered everything. There wasn't an ounce of Torah that he didn't cover. And of course, the Chafetz Chaim said that this is a very, very important subject that he himself taught to his son. In a Sefer Berurei Chaim by Rav Shalom Segal, in the 8th volume, page 74, he writes in the name of Rav Shlomo Wolbe, Alav Shalom, that Rav Wolbe in his Sefer Avnei Shlomo, in page 12, says that in his own yeshiva, he used to teach the students about kedusha, including the prohibition of sleeping on their stomach and on their back, as it says in the Gemara, Masechet Brachot, page 13, and also about the issues of wasting seed. And, when it comes to the issues of a man sleeping, certainly the Gemara says that a man should not sleep and is not allowed to sleep on his stomach and on his back. He has to sleep on his side so the seed does not come out of his body, because when you sleep on your stomach or you sleep on your back, you're in essence increasing the chances that you will waste seed during your sleep. So a man has to actually sleep on his side. And Rav Ephraim Shichyeh, he wrote in his Achtov L'Yisrael, and he paskin that if the man is awake, but he's simply laying on his back, he's just laying on the couch, he's laying on his bed, but he's awake, he's allowed to lay on his back, he's allowed to do that without an issue. On the stomach, it's a little more problematic, but nonetheless, where do we see this throughout history that it created a significant issue in Judaism? So says Rav the Berurei Chaim, he says that at the time of Shabbetai Tzvi, Imach Shemo v'Zichro, the fake MaShiach, Shabbetai Tzvi was convinced countless people that he is MaShiach. He was a Rasha Merusha, but he was a very smart person, unfortunately. And Rabbi Udaftaya, in his Ruchot Mesaprot, talks about how he, in one of the dibukim that he dealt with, was the dibuk of Shabbetai Tzvi. It was a filthy disgrace of a human being when he was in this world. And the Taz, Rabbi David HaLevi, heard about Shabbetai Tzvi, and he didn't know if he's Mashiach or he's not. So he sent his son-in-law, who was a very big Talmid Chacham, to go check him out, to go check out Shabbetai Tzvi. And after he made this journey and he came back, the Taz welcomed his son-in-law with a lot of honor and kavod and said, okay, no, so is he Mashiach or is he not? And the Taz and his son-in-law says he's not only not Mashiach, he's a fake Mashiach. He says, so how do you know it? How do you know for sure that he's a fake Mashiach? It's very simple. As soon as I walked in, I saw that he's sleeping on his stomach. So certainly the Mashiach does not sleep on his stomach. Now, your average person that does not know the issues of morality, the significance of wasting seed and how horrible this is, when the average person does not know what kedusha is, this story simply won't make any sense to them. How can you determine that this person is not Mashiach because he's sleeping on his stomach? I mean, it's up to him, that to do it, to control himself when he's awake, but not when he's asleep. You lose control. No, Habibi. If a person works on himself during the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu protects him at night. And if a person does not protect himself during the day, certainly HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to help him at night. As the Gemara in Masechet Avodah Zarah says, protect your eyes during the day so evil does not come out at night. What's evil that comes out at night? Chachamim say, the seed that comes out of the man's body. And certainly this is the same when it comes to women. Women think, oh yeah, poor lady, she got raped. Poor lady, she got dumped. Poor lady, she got taken advantage of. Yes, sometimes there is a poor lady that perhaps she didn't do anything herself to bring this horror to her life. And certainly nothing in the world will ever justify what happened to her as far as justifying the evil that happened to her. But nothing happens for no reason, meaning it's either because of something that she herself did in her previous life, previous reincarnation. Perhaps she was the rapist. Perhaps she was the one that caused it to herself from the previous life, and this was a a measure for measure punishment, or perhaps it's what she brought to herself during her life here. She's walking around immodestly, she's flirting with everything that moves, she's trying to get the attention of anybody, especially if it's a married man that's married to somebody else. She forgets to cover the majority of her body, and in fact she insists that she's always hot even during the winter, and therefore she can't cover her body. People like this, unfortunately, bring this punishment on themselves. Now, of course, again, like I said, we have to be careful with our words, and we're never ever justifying the act of the rapist or the guy that is just a filthy, disgusting human being that takes advantage and causes suffering to women. But nonetheless, a person needs to know that if a person reserves and preserves themselves and sanctifies themselves during the day, a Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to protect them at night. And this is why these types of things, typically, you're going to find them in the, happening to certain people, happening in certain communities that are, free with their body and their mind and their words and everything else. Because perhaps they did not learn this part of Judaism, this part of the Torah, and they simply thought that maybe the rumors that you hear in the secular world of the religious people, they have a strange life. When a man is with his wife, they have to do it through some type of bed sheet that has holes in it. Little do they know that if a man is so stupid to do such a thing, his wife is allowed to divorce him and get the ketubah. Meaning there's no such thing as this bedsheet. This is all nonsense that the goyim and the secularists and the reformists create just to make the Torah seem disgusting to people. When a person learns what kedusha really is, when Jewish intimacy is between him and his wife and what it's supposed to be, they'll literally realize that this is the highest level of holiness that it can possibly be. And this is not something like the world thinks, and it's certainly not what the world thinks about what Jews do. And that's why we need to learn this topic, and we're not afraid of those that say you shouldn't, simply because we know that b'makom she'en ish tishtadel liot ish. In a place that there's no man, there's no leader, you be the leader. Now, of course, a person needs to know that regardless of how much truth they have in their hands, they have to be careful. They have to be sensitive. They have to be clear. Because when you're not clear, it leads to problems. And especially in the world of religious people, the more religious they are, the more holy they are, sometimes the more, unfortunately, the more inclined they are to make mistakes in relation to these particular subjects. Mistakes that your average Baal Tshuva or your average secular person doesn't even know how it's possible to make a mistake. I recently spoke to a holy Avrech that literally dedicated his life to Torah in such a fashion, it's truly unbelievable that there are still people in the world that exist just like this. I mean, a person that simply all he wants was Torah. When it came to him getting married, and the rabbi called him to give him the Chatan class, he told him, Rabbi, it doesn't matter what you tell me. I've learned everything you're going to say in the Gemara. I simply cannot bring myself to be with a woman. I just want to learn Torah. I can't. I don't know what to do. Like, as far as I have no connection to it, I have no desire for it. And this is a person that was literally completely removed from the world. And he tells me that he only found out for sure. Like, he had theories. He's read it in the Gemara a few times, but he wasn't sure until he was 20 years old where babies actually exit the body of a woman. Simply, this is something that if you tell this to your average secular person, Baal Tshuva, or unfortunately modern Orthodox that's out there, like, what do you mean? Doesn't know where babies come from? What is he, stupid? No, this is a person that has learned more Torah than you're probably going to learn in 500 lifetimes. But nonetheless, literally, this person at 20 years old didn't know. Why? It wasn't on his mind. He was learning other things. There's much more important things than that. So when a person thinks of such holy people, they can't just assume, since they're holy, therefore you don't have to worry about these things. The same goes for the other side, the secular people. Since they're not really connected to it, then it doesn't matter to them. It's not going to affect them. The opposite. In fact, the more a person learns about this, the more they realize how much they want to be holy. And this is actually one of the motivations that we have to bring this material out there, because number one, when it comes to holiness, there's unfortunately only filth that's out there, and we need to at the very least balance it out and create some holiness, some truth that's out there. Number two, those that are going to sin, they're going to sin anyway, with or without our lectures, and therefore, as Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai says in the Mishnah, Oy li im omar, oy li im lo omar. Woe to me if I say, woe to me if I don't say, and therefore I say, because that's the Torah, and that's what we stand with. And the fools that want to sin, let them stumble upon their sins, as the Tanakh says. So a person needs to know that there are surely going to be certain people, they're looking for reasons and excuses to sin. They can sin if they want, that's their problem. The key is to bring the truth that's out there. The third point is to make sure that a person understands what they're doing when they're with their wife, and not just simply think that we're two beasts that are there, and hopefully there's a little calf that comes out. Many times women complain to me, men complain to me that their kids, unfortunately, are off. Their kids are off in one way or another. Sometimes physically, sometimes spiritually, sometimes both, and they really don't know why. Of course, Baruch Hashem, we do our best to help, but sometimes if a person takes this into account ahead of time, they not only eliminate all of those potential issues in the future, but even more so, they're more inclined to bring good to the world, even if there's no success in the act itself. Meaning that you would think, oh, so the kosher intimacy, the Jewish intimacy, the holy intimacy, that's for the sake of bringing children to the world. But what if I'm not at the age to bring children? Or what if I'm not at a time of my life to bring children? Perhaps I just had a baby 2-3 months ago. I'm still recovering, but at the same token, I'm still, with my spouse. No, this is for everybody. Why? Because the Chachamim teach us, Rabotai Karim, something out of this world. The Zohar Kadosh says that Avraham Avinu was with Sarah for nearly 100 years before Yitzchak came to the world. Now, what happened with all of that seed? What happened with all of that holiness that happened between them? Avraham was so holy that he literally did not know how beautiful his wife is because of how modest she was until they were crossing the river and she showed her leg. He said, now I know how beautiful you are. Now I know. Finally, after 100, she's 90 years old, finally you realize how beautiful she is. Chachamim in the Gemara say that Sarah Imenu was so beautiful that even if you take the most beautiful woman of that time, which is certainly more beautiful than the people of the world today, you take the most beautiful woman of that time, she looks like a monkey with hair on its face next to Sarah Imenu. That's how beautiful Sarah is, and Avraham Avinu only realized how beautiful she was when she's 90 years old. 90 years old. Says the Rabbi again, alav shalom. If I was Sarah, I would tell Avraham, hey, good morning. Hey, what happened to you last 90 years? Why, you didn't look at me? But no, Sarah didn't complain. Sarah was Kodesh Kodashim. So the point is that the act between Sarah and Avraham was Kodesh Kodashim, was holy of holies. So what happened if it didn't yield a baby? Was it to waste, chas v'shalom? Absolutely not. Says the Zohar Kadosh, Avraham Avinu, with each and every act that he was with his wife, that Zerah, Kadosh Baruch Hu took it and created the neshamot, the souls of the converts, the holy converts that are going to come to the world in the future. Now, what is this relevant to you? You're not Avraham and you're not Sarah. I'm not Avraham and I'm not Sarah. I'm not even the grain of sand that was under them at some point in the desert. What does it have to do with us? Says the Zohar Kadosh, when a couple is fulfilling this mitzvah with holiness, the way it's supposed to be done, whether it yields a baby or is not the ultimate goal. Why? It needs to yield kedusha. It needs to yield holiness, because that holiness will create a holy neshama. Whether that neshama will come to the world or not remains to be seen. But needless to say, it will be created, and certainly that neshama can either be your baby that comes to the world, or it can be one of the converts that are going to come to the world. That neshama can be one of the holy converts that come to the world, Rabotai. Meaning that every single act between a man and his wife has a significance. And the more a person realizes it, the more inclined they are to say, wait a minute, okay, so I have to actually put some thought into this. It's not just lust and just, be a beast and eat whatever's in front of me that's running or not running. There's actually some more to it. So how do I do all of this? When do I do all of this? Why do I do all of this? The more a person learns this topic, the more inclined they are to want to fulfill it. Says the Gemara that in the generation before MaShiach, there's going to be such confusion that the court system will turn into a place of prostitution. This is, again, one of the reasons why we have to bring this to light, because unfortunately you have leaders out there, both in a Jewish and a non-Jewish world, that are literally bringing more prostitution, more promiscuity, more immorality to the world than any other time since Sodom and Gomorrah. Whether it's the head rabbi of England, Mervesi Machshimo V'zichro, that is promoting homosexuality, or some of the other filth that we mentioned earlier and many times before, that are writing books with porno stars, all types of nonsense that's out there. The court is going to turn into a place of prostitution, is a prophecy that's being fulfilled as we speak. As we speak. And again, of course, like I said, and not even in a secular court, in the Congress itself, in the governments, across the board, you see how the minds of these people that are anti-God are working, where it's become standard to be a filthy pig. Every other day, somebody else gets exposed for pedophilia. Every other day, there's more information about the pedophilia ring in Hollywood and in the rich people's rings that are literally destroying people and buying and selling them like they're buying and selling tomatoes. Every day, there's more of this stuff, and a person needs to know how to protect themselves, how to protect their family, how to protect their children from this stuff. The primary way to protect them is through Torah, but not just learning the parasha of the week and not just learning the Gemara, but also learning topics like this that will literally show you how special a person can be when they are following the ways of the Torah. How special they can be from the beginning of their life to the end of their life, from the moment that they wake up until the moment that they go to sleep, even in the times that they actually are with their spouse. There is holiness to be created. Now, of course, there are certain people going to say, yeah, but maybe this should be done privately, maybe this. The Pirkei Avot says, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says, Lo abaishan lamed. Someone that's shy is not going to learn. If you are shy, you're so shy that you don't want to learn about certain things, maybe it's sensitive, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, you're never going to be a Talmid Chacham. You're never going to be a Talmid Chacham. If you look at the poskim of the past generations, the greater the poskim, the more questions they asked, the more questions they answered. Whether it's Rav Moshe Feinstein that is in Igrot Moshe, talks about every single topic under the sun, whether it's promiscuity, homosexuality, wasting seed, issues between him and her, holiness, whether it's Rav Ovadia and Yabia Omer, talks about all topics across the scope of the Torah. Every single one of the poskim discussed these issues. The greater they were, the more ground they covered, including this particular. Literally, there is an endless supply of holiness in regards to this topic. But a person themselves needs to know, you're not going to learn this issue. You're not going to learn how to be holy if you're going to be this pretend tzaddik that's behind the corner that's just going to pretend that God is going to protect you just because you're trying. No, you need to learn Torah. This is Torah and I need to learn it. What's the source for that? Says the Gemara, Masechet Chagiga, page 5b, where there was a great Gdolador named Rav. His name was Rav. He was known as Rav. And the Gemara says that he had a different name, but that was the name that he's mentioned across the scope of the Gemara is Rav. And this Rav was Kodesh Kodashim, so holy, so extraordinary, that even though he was in a generation of the Amoraim, they say that a certain Amoraim that were borderline, right between the generation of the Amoraim and the Tanaim, and Rav was one of them, and therefore he's considered a Tana. Tana means this is someone that if you see his name in the Gemara, this is a person that was able to resurrect the dead with his words, with praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is a person, Alacha is like Rav. So now Rav is Kodesh Kodashim, and he has a Talmid. Rav Kahana, who also is Kodesh Kodashim. One day, Rav goes home, and he's with his wife. And they go to the bedroom, not knowing that his student, Rav Kahana, is hiding under the bed. Why is Rav Kahana, holy Kodesh Kodashim, hiding under the bed? He wants to see how his Rav is with his wife. Is he like everybody else? No, surely I'm going to learn something over here. That he's probably the Rav, he's so holy, the act itself is probably going to take 5 seconds. He's going to fulfill the mitzvah of bringing children to the world, and that's it, he's back to the Bet Midrash. Go to the mikveh, go to Bet Midrash, finished. That's what he figured. But he hears, the Gemara says in Masechet Chayga, page 5b, that first he hears Rav speak to his wife. Talk to her, something interesting. It's listening to her, what's her ideas, what she likes, what she doesn't like. Then he hears them laughing. Oh, he's funny now. Never heard the Rav say a joke. He's laughing with his wife. Ooh, what? And then they're intimate. Rav Kahana is noticed at that time. And Rav says to him, what are you doing here? Rav Kahana says to his rabbi, Rav, you desire intimacy. Meaning, I thought that, something is going to be different over here, but it seems like you even desire the intimacy. Like everybody else, it seems like. Or even more. Rav says to him, get out of here. This is not derech eretz. This is not good manners for you to be here. So if you look at this Gemara, you say, wait a minute, this is weird stuff. Why would he do such a thing? How is this not a violation of the Torah? This is why we have to always remind you and remind ourselves that the way you learn Torah is not from a single place. Because the way the Torah is, in one place it's poor, and another place it's rich. Meaning in one place you have part of the issue, and another place you'll have more extensions to the issue, regardless of what topic it is. And therefore, if you go to the Gemara Masechet Brachot, page 62a, the same exact story is mentioned again. Only this time there are extra words of what happened during that conversation, where Rav Kahana is hiding under the bed, and Rav finds out, hey, what are you doing over here? Get out of here, it's not derech eretz. He says, yeah, but I need to be here. Why you have to be here? He says, Torahi velilmod ani tzarich. This is Torah, Kvod Harav. This is Torah, and I need to learn it. That's why I'm here. This is Torah. I need to learn how to be with a wife. I need to learn how to produce kedusha in the world. Now, if you would think this is the only story in the Gemara, you'd say this is kind of weird. And if this is the only place, you say, oh, how do you know it's really, that's what he meant? Gemara Masechet Brachot, page 62a, has another story. Rabbi Akiva enters the bathroom of Rabbi Yoshua. He enters the bathroom without Rabbi Yoshua knowing that he's there, and watches him go to the bathroom. Later on, he tells what he learned to Ben Azai. Ben Azai says, this is how far you travel after your rabbi? What's the matter with you? He goes, no, what are you talking about? Rabbi Akiva says to him, I learned a lot. I learned that first and foremost, you can't just go anywhere however you want. Second of all, I learned that you can't just take off your clothes and just be completely immodest, even in the bathroom, even if there's nobody else there. You have to be modest even in the bathroom. Third of all, I learned that to clean yourself, you can't just do any way you want. You have to use your left hand. Can't use your right hand. You have to use your left hand. I learned halachot here. I learned Torah here. And then the Gemara says, Ben Azai did it himself. To who? To Rabbi Akiva. Ben Azai went to Rabbi Akiva. He followed him into the bathroom without Rabbi Akiva knowing. So one of the other sages says to Ben Azai, this is what you do. You follow your rabbi even to the bathroom. You're that fanatic. He says to them, Torah ve'otat tzarich limod. This is Torah and I need to learn it. I need to learn how to go to the bathroom. I need to learn the halachot of going to the bathroom. Today, Baruch Hashem, we have books. But sometimes a person thinks he can just learn everything he wants through the books. That's why the Gemara says, A person that has shimush, meaning he serves the rabbi, he's next to the rabbi, he tries any opportunity that he can to get close to the rabbi, to see how the rabbi behaves, to see what the rabbi does, who, what, when, how. That person certainly will be greater than somebody that simply reads just books. As if the person that reads books doesn't know anything in comparison to the person that has what's called shimush. Because he cleaved to the chacham, he cleaved to the rabbi. But here we see, Rabotai, how much the Chachamim were yearning to learn not just the Torah of the basics that people spend their time on, but even the basics of life, how to apply this to your day-to-day life, how to go to the bathroom, how to be intimate, how to be this, how to be that. This is Torah and I need to learn it. This is Torah and I need to learn it. Now, of course, when a person is holy but ignorant at the same time, certainly this particular topic can create a lot of issues. Rabbi Ephraim told me of stories aware of himself, and I'll even tell you a story that I believe I've said before years ago that I've witnessed myself. Where he had there was a woman that was a very, very righteous woman in Yerushalayim. And from time to time, she would bring her bdika cloth to show the rabbi to check if if she's nida or not. And the rabbi noticed that it's always pristine, meaning there's never an issue, there's never nothing on it. Always, anytime you're dealing with bdika, there's always some type of stain or something that it's questionable. But here, this was like as white as can be, nothing. Every woman changes from month to month, from this to this. So there's always something. But here it says clean, like something like a cloud. And he found it strange. The rabbi found it strange. And he told the Rabbanit, why don't you talk to this tzadikah, ask her some questions to see something is not right here. There's something wrong here. It's too clean. This is a real story, Rabotai. This is a real story I'm telling you. And the next story I'm going to tell you is even more shocking. So the Rabbanit, mamash had siyata dishmaya to ask these questions. She asks her, so tell me, you come to the rabbi, you bring the bdika. Why you bring the bdika? You go, no, I just want to check. I'm afraid, making a mistake. Oh, okay. Everything's okay? Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Tell me, how did you check? So I checked in the place. Oh, okay. And you checked, you checked. She goes, yeah, I checked the surface and the holes and the crevices, whatever. Oh, okay. And the Rabbanit had a siyata dishmaya. She asked the question you simply never ask. You simply never ask. Why? Because you would think it's common sense. She asks this tzadikah, this young girl, where did you check? So the girl says, check normally, I check my teeth. She's checking the bdika on her teeth. She's rubbing the bdika on her teeth. That's what she thought. She said there was crevices, she said that the holes, so the teeth. She had no concept that you're supposed to check the area, the private area of the woman. No concept. No one ever told her why. She went to a kala class, and they told her you have to check, but they weren't clear that that's where you do it. They weren't clear. There was another woman, story that came out also in Yerushalayim. Another very, very holy couple. The Baal is an avrech, tzaddik, kadosh, woman, tzaddikah, kedusha, dedicating their life to Torah, mitzvot, everything. 13 years they're married. No babies. Pele plain. They go to doctors, different checks. The doctor says everything checks. They're perfectly healthy. We have no idea why there's no kids. We simply have no idea why there's no kids. They check. Everything is perfect. They should have babies zaras. Nobody understands. What ends up coming out eventually? Some people started asking more clear questions. only to find out that this very holy couple was so glued into the Torah, they had no concept of how to be intimate and where the seed goes. In so many words, they didn't know how to do it. They didn't know where the seed goes in order to produce babies. It went in different places. 13 years, they're making sins, not knowing. Not knowing. And not only not knowing, suffering for it, because there's no babies. Why? They went to a khatan class. They went to a kala class. But they didn't speak clearly. They didn't speak clearly. The holier the person, Rabotai Karim, they were more removed from it. I myself witnessed, my own Rabbanit, God bless her, there were times that we were involved with helping people get married, Baruch Hashem. And there was one time, a woman that my Rabbanit gave her some education about how to be a kala, how to do this, how to do that. And she noticed that this woman, she wasn't, that young. She was already, I believe, probably 40 years old or so, but finally getting married. And she noticed that she was very nervous about this specific issue of tarat mishpacha and checking and going to the mikveh. And usually going to the mikveh for a woman is like a vacation. It's beautiful. Many of the mikvehs around the world are beautiful, first-class places. They spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, rightly so, to make it a beautiful place, to encourage the women to go to the mikveh, encourage the women to do this big mitzvah. The Rav Ephraim's mom has been a baalanit in the mikveh for over 40 years, Baruch Hashem. Certainly that has brought endless bracha. In her sefer that she wrote, you have endless amount of wisdom that came from her experience of being a baalanit in the mikveh. And you see also the women writing different miracles that happen to them as a result of going to the mikveh. So usually women are, if they know about this mitzvah, they like it, they're excited about it. But this woman was very, very upset, you can say. And my Rabbanit, God bless her, she asked her, why are you so nervous about going to the mikveh? She says, I don't know, I'm not comfortable. She asked her, why are you not comfortable? You go, you clean yourself, you go to the mikveh, you dip in, you say a bracha, what's not comfortable? So I'm not comfortable about the checking. And Rabbanit, God bless her, she had siyata dishmaya. She says, what do you mean the checking? She goes, checking. She goes, no, tell me what check. What do you mean checking? She goes, I'm uncomfortable when the baalanit is going to check me. She says, what do you mean check you? She thought that the baalanit, the woman that works in the mikveh, is going to put her hand and this and in her area to check her. That's what she thought. She had no concept. No concept that this is so far removed from reality. No one touches you. Nothing. But she thought in her mind. Why? When she learned this topic in some book, it wasn't clear enough to apparently give her what the truth is. So we see from here real life stories, as well as the Gemara, that also real life stories were from the previous generation, whether it's past, present, and certainly we hope not as much in the future as a result of these shulim, that you have to be clear. You have to educate people about every topic, especially today, where there's so much filth and promiscuity and simply an abomination running in the streets, running over the internet. There is so much garbage that's out there that it's literally a miracle that any of you are watching a Shiur Torah right now with me. It's a miracle. If you're watching the Shiur Torah, you should say Mizmor LeTodah, a special Tehillim, thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu that you miraculously merited to actually see a Shiur Torah instead of some garbage that's out there. And if you understood what I'm saying and you connected to it, another Mizmor LeTodah. In today's world of filth, it's a miracle that you could actually watch a real Shiur Torah. Because just because somebody wants to watch a Shiur Torah, they can potentially say, I want to watch Shiur Torah, and they see some video of some filthy guy with his wife or him by himself talking about all types of things that should never be spoken of, and they think that this is Judaism. So a person needs that merited to see real Torah, real truth, literally has to thank Kadosh Baruch Hu extra. Now the Gemara Masechet Shabbat in page 118b, the name of Rabbi Yosef says, 5 times I was with my wife and brought 5 pine trees that are amazing to Israel. Rabbi Yosef was one of the sages, one of the great sages of Am Yisrael, and he had 5 sons, each one more holy than the other. And he says, 5 times I was with my wife, and 5 times I brought these tzaddikim to the world. So the Chachamim naturally ask, wait a minute, there's a mitzvah that he obligated himself when he signed the ketubah, that he has to be with his wife. There's mitzvah, not just prubu, not just to bring babies, but also the mitzvah of being with his wife. The actual pleasure itself is a mitzvah. Him to please his wife. So, how could it be only 5 times? So the Chacham explained, no. It's not that he was with his wife only 5 times. It's that these 5 times, he was with his wife multiple times during the same night. Why? Because there is a teachings that if somebody wants to bring a boy to the world, not just anything that's out there and hope for the best, wants to bring a boy to the world, then the wife has to climax before the husband does. So many times the husband is not capable of doing that. Sometimes the husband is too excited and he's not able to do it. So there's a pitaron, there's a trick to the trade. What? Be with her multiple times. That way, even if you climax beforehand and if you go again, that B'ezrat Hashem you'll have the strength to do that. By the time you do it again, she will also climax, and that, in essence, will create a boy that's going to come to the world. So we see from here again that even the Gemara, when it discusses it, you have to learn it deeply in order to know what's being said, because if you learn it superficially, you say, 5 times with his wife, that's a sin. How could you be married for all those years and have 5 kids and only be 5 times? So a person needs to know that every single thing has an explanation, every single thing has commentary on it, every single thing needs to be understood in full context. And this is in essence what the Ramban HaKadosh Nachmanides, Rabbi Moshe Bar Nachman, brought to the world, the light that he brought to the world in this Iggeret Hakodesh. Now, who is the Ramban? We've discussed it in the past, but it's certainly worth it to repeat again. The Ramban was one of the holy Rishonim, lived approximately 800 years ago. He was born in Spain, in Gerona, in the year 1194. And his neshama returned to its maker in the year 1270. Rabbi Moshe Bar Nachman was someone that literally did things that I'm not really sure how it's humanly possible to do, and how much Torah he learned and how much Torah he covered as far as his writings. Literally, there was no part of the Torah that he didn't cover. Whether it was commentary on the Torah itself, the Tanakh, or it was commentary on the Gemara, or it was Halacha, or it was Kabbalah, or it was Musar. Literally every aspect of the Torah, he touched it. The Ramban had extraordinary Talmidim, such as the Rashba, also Rabbi Yaron HaLevi, who is the one that wrote the Sefer HaChinuch. He also, one of his Talmidim, or certainly his cousin, was Rabbeinu Yonah. Rabbeinu Yonah of Girondi, who wrote the famous Sefer Shabbetai Tzvi, one of the foundational Musar books in the world. That was his cousin. And the Ramban made Aliyah. He was born in Spain, but he made Aliyah when he was 73 years old. Why make Aliyah at such an age, to go to Eretz Yisrael before all the Zionists came and turned the country into an anti-Torah state? Why make Aliyah? Well, in the year 1263, there was a Rasha that left Judaism named Pablo Cristiani. Of course, that wasn't the name that he was born with, But when he left Judaism and he joined Christianity, he turned his name into a Christian name. And his new role in the world was to cause Jews to leave and abandon Hashem and turn to the idolatry that's called Christianity. And this Rasha, Christiani, went to his superiors, the king and so on, and demanded that the Ramban come and answer the questions that the Christian world has about the Jewish world, because his goal was to convert all of the Jews to Christianity. And therefore he wanted them to have a public debate. Now, all of the other rabbis throughout all of the generations ran away from debating with the Christians. Not because there was even a remote chance that they would lose, but rather because the Christians simply, they would win by killing you. After you destroy them, they would simply kill you, your family, and everybody else that you know. So nothing good would come out of it. So the Ramban did not want to have this debate, but when he was commanded by the king to do so, he agreed to do it under the promise that the king says, King James said that he will protect him and no one's going to kill him. And they had this very famous debate in Barcelona over a period of 4 days. B'ezrat Hashem, one day perhaps we'll do a series about that debate. But until then, during those 4 days, there were multiple questions that the Ramban got the permission to answer freely without being threatened of death. And he destroyed Christianity to pieces. Answering those questions and destroying Christianity in such a fashion that it's been 800 years. And the Christian world still is looking for answers that they'll never find. After destroying them in a debate, the Christians certainly knew that he won the debate. It was known among everybody, but since they had the weapons, they had the power, they told everybody, no, the Christians won. And they published a booklet about the debate, removing segments of the debate that the Ramban actually said, to make it look like he didn't know the answer. So the Ramban, seeing that they did this, publicized the entire debate as it actually really was. And after he did that, the Christians went after him and tried to kill him. He got some protection, but eventually the only solution was for him to flee the country and go on a permanent exile. So of course the Ramban, already at a later age, has to travel from place to place and eventually decides that he's going to make aliyah to Eretz Yisrael. He went up to Eretz Yisrael, built a Bet Midrash, built a Jewish community over there. But during his life, as not only an expression of his love for Torah, love for the Jewish people, love for Hashem, but also his Yirat Shamayim could also be seen about where, not only what he wrote, but rather the topics that he wrote about. One of the famous Sfarim that the Ramban wrote was a sefer called Milchamot Hashem, which is the wars of God. This sefer, the Ramban decided to write after a Talmid Chacham by the name of that wrote the Baal HaMeor, wrote a sefer that paskind or contradicted the psak of the Rabbi Al-Fasi, the Rif. And the Ramban saw this sefer and decided to take a stance and write an entire sefer showing why the Baal HaMeor is wrong and the Rif is right. With the exception of minor things, he took the time to write an entire sefer to prove that the holy Rif is right and the Baal HaMeor was also holy. He's wrong. Now, of course, the average person writes a book. They write about their own thoughts. They write about their own ideas. They write about their own name. Rarely do they write about defending somebody else, even if that somebody else sometimes is Hashem himself. But here we see what kind of Yirat Shamayim, what kind of fear of the Almighty the Ramban had, of how much he loved the Torah and how much he wanted the truth to be out there. Now, certainly, the Gemara says in Masechet Yevamot, page 97a, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that anyone that says words of Torah in the name of the Chacham that said it, that Chacham's lips are moving even in his grave. So certainly this series that's going to cover the Iggeret Hakodesh of the Ramban is going to bring nachat to the Ramban. But more so than anything else, we believe and know that this could bring a lot of nachat and shalom to Am Yisrael. Because when it talks about the issues of intimacy in Judaism, if you look across the Gemara to try to figure out what does the Torah call intimacy. Now in English there's like 500 names for this issue. Because to them, the difference between an animal and a human is not very much. And the same thing goes with a lot of other languages. But in the Holy Tongue, although the subject itself is called kedusha, if you go to the Gemara Masechet Shabbat, page 152, it says that this intimacy between a man and his wife is called masim shalom babayit, bringing peace to the house. Because when you have holy intimacy, when you have kedusha between a man and his wife, it brings peace to the house. Meaning it's called by the outcome rather than by the act itself. Now the question is, what is Iggeret Hakodesh? Why is it that this Iggeret Hakodesh, first and foremost, was thought for years that it was really written by somebody else, not the Ramban? For years it was taught that Rabbi Yosef ben Avraham Gigatilia, a big Chacham, I remember seeing him quoted in the Reshit Chochmah, bringing an extraordinary chidush about somebody that will take on, if somebody embarrasses them, and they're happy about it, and they're happy about Hashem, and they connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they're forgiving, and all together, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides to become the chavruta of such a holy person. So this Chacham, Rabbi Gigatilia, Tzaddik, Kodesh, and many people thought that he's the one that wrote this Iggeret Hakodesh. But one of the greatest proofs that we have that the Ramban wrote this Iggeret, aside from the many Chachamim that say he did, is from my friend that watched some of our shiurim, Baruch Hashem, Rav Yaakov Bar Nachman, who translated this Iggeret Hakodesh to English as well, because he is not just a rabbi, is not just a Talmid Chacham, he's also a 26th generation descendant of the Ramban. And he writes in the beginning of this Iggeret Hakodesh, in his own section of his introduction to the book, is that he addresses the question of who wrote it, and he says, while some had doubts about who wrote this Iggeret Hakodesh, in our family, there's never been any doubt, because it's a well-known tradition within the family of the Ramban that our grandfather wrote this Iggeret. It doesn't get better than that. Now, the question is, why did some Chachamim think that this could be written by somebody else? Perhaps it could be because of some confusion of the commentary that the Ramban made on his commentary on the Torah. We see that in his commentary on the Torah, in Sefer Vayikra, parts of it are quoted in this Iggeret, but more is obviously in the commentary on the Torah. In Sefer Vayikra, Parashat Acharei, chapter 18, verse 6. This verse is an introduction to the section of Arayot, of the issues of immorality, for prohibited actions, specifically discussing the issues of incest, on the verse that says, any man shall not approach his close relative to uncover nakedness. I am Hashem. The Ramban writes, the reason for the prohibition against sexual immorality regarding cohabitation with close relatives, i.e. incest, is not explicit in scripture, and the Rabbi, the Rambam he's referring to, said in Moreh Nevuchim that the purpose of the prohibition is so as to limit cohabitation and to disdain it, and for one to make do with little of it. And these women that scripture prohibits from among one's wife's close relatives are the ones that are found constantly together with her in the house. And the same is true regarding his own close relatives, that they are normally found in proximity to him, and thus he's often alone with them. And the Rambam gives this reason for the prohibition of incestuous union. Rabbi Avraham ibn Ezra also writes, similar, in vain, that since the desires of man's heart are like those of the animals, it would not be feasible to prohibit relations with all females. And so scripture prohibited those women who are found together with him at all times. But this reason is very weak. Logically, that scripture should make one liable for karet, for excision, for cohabiting with these relatives mentioned here, because at times they're found together with him. While it's permitted that a man marry many women, even to hundreds and thousands according to the Torah, what harm would it do if a man would marry his daughter alone or permitted to children? And he goes into a whole detail of why it cannot be that the prohibition of incest is because the whole act of man and woman is really a ugly act, if you will, animalistic. And he brings, the Rambam in essence said that this is an animalistic act and therefore limit it. The Ibn Ezra said that it wouldn't be a surprise if the Torah limited it altogether since it's such animalistic. And he actually even brings in the Iggeret Hakodesh, the Ramban actually knew the work of Aristotle, who, made the whole issue of intimacy into a disgusting act altogether. So he says that because of this, perhaps the Rambam concluded that since the act itself is not tasteful, it's an animalistic act, and some of you would even say disgusting altogether, then surely there should be a prohibition for, at the very least, to have incest. Says this is the weak reason, this is not the reason. But rather, what's the reason? He gives a couple of reasons. One reason, he says, is a Kabbalistic reason, where he's simply telling you that there are certain laws that are matters of the edicts of the king. And the laws of incest are in that category of decrees, of chukim. Meaning that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in his wisdom, governing his kingdom, he is the only one that knows the full extent and the need of the benefit of these specific commandments. And he does not necessarily give reasons to his people in his kingdom except for the wisest of his advisors. And then he goes into more extensive reasons, Kabbalistically, of why incest is prohibited. But then there is a more relevant reason, I would say, for the average person to understand. And he says, Veda, כי המסגל דבר מרוחק ונמאס בתורה הזולתי לקיום המין, ואשר לא ייוולד ממנו הוא אסור. וכן אשר איננו טוב בקיום ולא יצלח בו, תאסור אותו התורה. וזה טעם אל כל שאר בשרו. כי יצרו עיירה. ירחיק הדבר מפני השיער, והלשון נגזר מן הנשאר בציון והנותר בירושלים. In so many words, he says the reason why the Torah says to stay away from this sin of incest is not chas v'shalom that this is a ugly act because it's ugly to be with a woman altogether even if she's your wife, but rather because incest will not lead to good children, will not lead to good babies, will not lead to good fruits. Because if all relations would not lead to good fruits, would not lead to good things, certainly the Torah would prohibit all of it. Since it prohibits only this, it's Hashem telling you simply, you commit this particular sin, it will not bring anything good. It will only bring damage to the world. Torah is for you to live, not to die. There are certain things that a person has to do. So you can't say, like what the filthy Aristotle said, that it's just an ugly act, even though he himself was a filthy, disgusting person that chased this, and including trying to sin with his boss, Alexander the Great's wife. He tried to come on to her in a very famous story where she exposed him to her husband. And so he said one thing and did another, just like the rest of the Reshaim that are out there throughout history. And he said that the conclusion that the Rambam concluded from that is wrong. And the same thing with the Ibn Ezra. And he says, no, the reason why it's forbidden, why incest specifically is forbidden and not him and his wife is forbidden, is because of the outcome of this act. The Torah is going to allow you to do things that will bring good to the world and prohibit you from doing things that will bring bad to the world. Bad to yourself and bad to others. That's the point. That's the point. Certainly there's more to it, such as the decree of the king who simply runs his world and doesn't have to explain himself. But even if you wanted a taste of what a simple explanation of it, simple. Incest will bring horrible things. And of course, science has caught up to what the Ramban wrote 800 years ago, and it's a scientific fact that incest does bring a lot of health issues, mental issues, and a lot of other types of problems that are out there. So, of course, the words of the Torah don't need science to verify them, but nonetheless, it's always nice to note that science has caught up to our Torah. Be'ezrat Hashem, they'll continue catching up. Now, with that being said, when some people read this section that thought that the Ramban was in essence saying that, oh, okay, if it brings good, it's good. If it brings bad, it's no good. In essence, not necessarily turning this into this such a holy thing, it's such a big mitzvah, and so on and so forth. Like, how could this same person, the same chacham, that looked at this issue in such a, superficial manner, if you will, from the eyes of the, a certain perspective, how could he write such a letter that literally takes the intimacy between a man and his wife and turns it into literally the greatest act in the world? The greatest mitzvah, the greatest kedusha, the greatest everything. How could that go from that? There lies, perhaps, some of the confusion when someone did not know some of the other things that the Ramban wrote. Now, of course, the Ramban writes further in Parashat Kedoshim, in chapter 19, that I brought you in a lecture a couple of months ago at the event, where on the pasuk Kedoshim Tiyu, where Kadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, דבר אל כל עדת בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם קדושים תהיו כי קדוש אני. הקדוש ברוך הוא says כי קדוש אני אדוני אלוהיכם. הקדוש ברוך הוא says to Moshe Rabbeinu, speak to the entire assembly of the children of Israel and say to them, you be holy because I am holy. Hashem your God. So Rashi says, what is being holy? Being holy is, in essence, parush, abstinence, limiting things. Don't focus on materialism. The Ramban disagrees to a certain extent with Rashi. He says, no. Hashem is not telling you to be abstinent just from materialism and things that are forbidden to you, and therefore you should be holy by staying away from those bad things. No. He's actually telling you that to be holy, you also have to be abstinent from the things that are permitted to you. Permitted even your wife herself. How so? He says, our sages of blessed memory have already said in the Sifra that this portion was stated in an assembly of all the people because most of the fundamentals of the Torah are dependent on this holiness. This mitzvah here, that to be holy, is the foundation of our entire Torah. And to be removed is not just to be removed from the forbidden sexual relationships, from sins of immorality. For every place in the Torah that you find restrictions of sexual immorality, you find the mention of holiness. That's what Rashi said. However, he says, I saw in Torah Kohanim that to be holy is you shall be removed, meaning to teach us that you are to sanctify yourself and become holy, for I am holy, means that just as I am holy, so you shall be holy, just as I am removed, so shall you be removed. And in my opinion, this removal spoke of not to abstain merely from the forbidden sexual relationships, as Rashi would say, rather removal from what is mentioned everywhere in the Talmud, whose practitioners are the Prushim, meaning the idea that this commandment in the Torah is warning us against forbidden relationships and forbidden foods and so on is not sufficient. He's saying that there are things that are permitted. You're allowed to cohabit with your spouse. You're allowed to eat certain foods. You're allowed to do certain things. But what if a person says, since I'm allowed to eat, as long as it's kosher, I'll eat like a pig. Since I'm allowed to procreate, I'll procreate every day, all the time. Morning, afternoon, night, between morning and night, between morning and afternoon. All day, every day. He says such a person will take the Torah and become a degenerate, a despicable degenerate within the parameters of what is permitted in the Torah. Naval birshut Torah. And therefore this verse of you be holy comes after the Torah tells us of the prohibition of the physical act that it forbid categorically, and it commands us in general that we shall remove from the excesses of the permissible act. And that is that a person should be temperate in cohabiting with his wife, like the idea that they, in Gemara Masechet Brachot, page 22a, the sages did, so that the Torah scholars should not be found constantly with their wives like roosters. And they shall utilize their marital relations only as needed for the fulfillment of the commandment regarding it. And he goes even more and more extensively and so on. The point being is, just like the rest of the Torah, we see that in one place they're poor, in another place they're rich. We cannot learn Torah from just a single source. When you learn more of what the Ramban said in regards to kedusha, he wasn't saying that the act is not animalistic, which is what the Ramban in essence said. No. He was saying that that's not sufficient. The incest is not prohibited because the act is animalistic, because technically if it was animalistic and it would produce bad all the time, then it would even be forbidden with a man and his wife. On the other hand, so he's not disagreeing on the principle. He's agreeing that it's animalistic. On the other hand, he's saying that to be holy, to achieve what this Iggeret Hakodesh is meant to achieve, you have to be holy. You have to understand that it's not just simply doing it at a specific time, at a specific place, and just that. There is also a way. There's also a process. There's also a certain mindset that a person has to acquire in order to achieve this holiness. Because if you would simply think that, oh, it's forbidden because it's ugly, no, you're thinking like the Christians think, like their Pope, who claims to be holy because he's removed from women altogether. Obviously, everybody knows that's completely fake, especially since every one of the churches has an orphanage right next door to it. The reality is that holiness is not achieved by complete abstinence. At the same token, you can't go extreme just because, oh, it's not allowed to be with incestual relationships, but if it's kosher relationship, you could be as often as you can be. No, there is a middle. To achieve holiness is to have something that's in the middle, meaning that even if it's allowed, it has to be within reason, within the parameters of the Torah, within the instructions of the Torah. At certain times, at certain mindsets, certain process that requires a person to sanctify themselves, because if they don't and they simply act as their body allows them to act, then in essence the Ramban becomes right. Aristotle even becomes right. That they literally turn the permissible act into an outright animalistic act, and therefore it should be forbidden across the board. On the other hand, if you do it the permissible way, not only will it become a mitzvah, but also it becomes holiness. Now, the Mesilat Yesharim, in chapter 13, Path of the Just, Rabbi Chaim Moshe Luzzatto, about 300 years ago, says, what is this abstinence? What is this abstinence? He says abstinence, it's the beginning of the chapter. And then we'll delve into a few things that are later on in it. It says abstinence is the first step towards Chassidut. Many times people think that Chassidut, especially today, is based on the clothing you wear or what Rabbi you follow. No. You want to know about Chassidut? You go to the Ramchal. And there's no way in the world that any recent rabbi was greater than the Ramchal. This is not just my statement. This is simply the Masoret of Am Yisrael. The Ramchal says a few hundred years ago that if you want to achieve Chassidut, you want to get to the level of Chassidut, of piety, abstinence is the first step. But here I want to point out, he says, that whatever we've explained until now referred to what a person had to do in order to become righteous, not Chassidut. From here onward, meaning the rest of the chapters after this, chapter 13, is how one can become a Chassid. And therefore abstinence is to Chassidut what vigilance is to alacrity. The first member of each pair involves renouncing the evil, while the second involves doing good. But there, he clarifies. He clarifies that something that some people perhaps don't know. He says, you may of course ask if this in fact is something both necessary and vital, why don't the sages enact legislation for this way that they did for other rabbinic enactments? And the answer is clear and simple. The sages only enacted decrees in the Gemara Masechet Bava Kama, page 79b, that the majority of people could abide by. And the majority of people cannot attain Chassidut. It's enough for them to be simply righteous. Now, what is the issue here? The issue is that most people, when it comes to the topic of piety, don't realize that there is two types. The two types of Chassidut. There is good and there is bad. And I'm not referring to there is good, righteous people and then there's heretics. That's not what I'm talking about. Meaning there is a way to achieve this piety through that a good act and there's a bad act that looks like it's going to achieve piety, but in reality it's bad. What is it? He says, if you're going to be abstinent, you have to know that there is certain abstinence that is forbidden. Meaning that you're not allowed to be abstinent from this specific act. And there is certain abstinence that you should do it if you want to achieve piety. And he says, one who inquires into the matter will discover the three distinct levels: the actual prohibitions, their restrictions, which is the fences around the Torah, which are the enactments and the safeguards that our sages of blessed memory decreed, all of Am Yisrael, and the individual restrictions that every person who is committed to abstinence must observe by setting his own boundaries and prohibiting himself what's permissible. So here we see that to achieve piety, a person must restrict himself from certain things. But if those restrictions will lead him to sin, then certainly this is not piety. Now, one of the ways that a person could think, if I want to be righteous, I'll be less intimate. Because the Rambam and the Ibn Ezra said that it's an animalistic act altogether. Now, if this person only commits the act for the sake of just simply relieving himself, you would think, maybe he should do it less. And the answer is not necessarily going to be correct. Why? Because if him relieving himself is going to allow him to be more focused when he's serving Hashem, more focused when he's learning Torah, more focused when he's praying and so on, that act in itself becomes holy, becomes a mitzvah. On the other hand, if all he thinks about is this all the time, and it's not about serving Hashem in any way, then sure he should limit it. Meaning that it's not such a rule of thumb, like you would think. It's not just like, it's always yes and it's always no. Too much is always bad and too little is too... No, it's not. The person has to understand that there's certain things that a person needs to take into account with each and every single thing. But the point being is that you would think that if you would limit it altogether, that would make you more righteous, because you'd see, let's say for example in the Gemara or the Rambam says, Talmidei Chachamim, they're with their wives, much less, perhaps once, maybe twice a week. It's not something that your average person even thinks about. Sometimes people ask questions, say, listen, my wife is not making me happy. I want to be together, 5, 6, 7 times a week. She only wants to be together once or twice. And you would think, you know what? This guy's a Rasha, she's a Tzadikah. Wrong. If he's a Talmid Chacham, he wouldn't. This is not something that would be a question coming from a Talmid Chacham typically. Typically, this is coming from an average person. And an average person, if you tell him, listen, I only want to be with you like once or twice a week, guess what? The wife is the problem, not the husband. Why? She doesn't realize he has to get a certain amount of fulfillment in order to achieve his purpose in the world. In order to be able to pray the right way, in order for him to learn the right way, in order for him to do certain things. And her refraining from doing it is bringing an enormous amount of damage, not only to the marriage, but to herself. In fact, Rabotai Karim, if a woman understood what her responsibility is, she would want to learn this no less than the husband does. And he would not want to learn this no less than he does. Because when you learn about kedusha, you realize that it's when you do it right, according to what the Ramban is putting in, the rest of the Chachamim discuss this topic, then you're not proving the Rambam wrong. You're actually proving that you are not that person, that halakha is relevant to. The Rambam, when he paskind, is in essence talking about if somebody's purely being animalistic. The Ramban, when he paskind, is in essence telling, yes, you're right, if you're an animal, you're despicable in the name of Torah, in essence, that halakha that the Rambam wrote, that's what's relevant to you. But if you are trying to achieve piousness, you're trying to achieve kedusha, then it's not relevant to you. Meaning, both this and this are words of the living God. But a person needs to know where they stand. And that all depends on how they live their life on a day-to-day basis, what they do with their time, how much they learn Torah, how connected they are to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, when a person looks in the Gemara, they'll see many times that there are certain stories that if you simply look at the story itself, it's hard for you to understand how this could be a story about one of the great Chachamim, one of the great Tzaddikim. Whether it's the story about David HaMelech, who was with Bathsheba, multiple times in a single night, in order to prove the point that he wasn't able to marry his Pilegish, not because he was old, but rather because he was forbidden according to the Torah. Or it's a story, for example, that I'll tell you about in one of the sages, Rava, in the Gemara Masechet Ketubot, page 65a. Rava was the chavruta of Abaye. In practically every page in the Gemara, you see one of their or both of their names. And Abaye died before Rava. Abaye was married to a woman that was named Chuma. And Chuma, the law in the Torah is that when there is a death, the inheritance goes to the kids. But the wife, as long as she doesn't get remarried, she stays in the same house and she gets certain payments from the inheritance that's coming out of the kids to pay for her needs. But if she gets remarried, that's no longer relevant as far as the inheritance. But Chuma came to the Bedin to Rava, who was the head of Bedin. And she says, give me mezonot, give me money so I can pay, so I can live my life. So Rava said, he gave her money. And she says, no, I also want money to buy wine. And Rava says to her, no, what do you mean? I know Abaye. He's my chavruta for years. Why? Abaye never drank wine. I'm not going to give you something you didn't get from your own husband. Chuma says to him, no, you're wrong. Abaye would buy us wine. And I swear to you that Abaye would not only give us wine, but he would give us big glasses of wine, like this. And she gave him the her arm to show how big the glass is. These thin glasses, tall glasses, thin and tall. So she showed her arm, but to show him the size of what it would be. And when she raised her arm, her sleeve fell a little bit, and it showed her wrist. Not intentionally, chas v'shalom. Simply, she just showed him her arm to give him an understanding of how big this glass is that she did get this wine, and therefore she's entitled to it now. Chuma was so beautiful that she had the beauty of like Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. There were certain people that were called the beautiful people of Yerushalayim. That when her sleeve fell off a little bit, that showed her wrist, the entire room became light. Something that we really truly can't comprehend. Because what people today think is beauty and what real beauty is worlds apart. Worlds. So literally, just imagine, somebody shows you their wrist and the entire room is light. Rava gave her, apparently whatever he gave her, immediately got up from the bedin, went home and asked his wife, who was the tzadikah, who was the daughter of Rav Chisda, asked her to be together with him. And of course, this tzadikah, his wife, fulfilled the mitzvah with her husband. And after they were together, she asked him, Rava, my dear husband, who was at the bedin today? Meaning, where did this sudden desire come from? Not every day that they come in the afternoon to all of a sudden. Where did this come from? He says, Chuma. Chuma came to the bedin. This tzadikah, his wife, she loved him so much, she was afraid. Not afraid that he's married, because technically you're allowed to marry multiple wives at those times. In those times you were still allowed to marry multiple wives, so technically he was allowed to marry her. But since she knew that Chuma already was called a Isha Katlanit, she already had multiple husbands that died. So she was afraid that because she's so beautiful, her husband is going to marry her, and he's going to die. So she's going to lose her husband. She went to find Chuma, started hitting her with a lock until she left the city. Says, don't get out of here, don't kill my husband. You already killed multiple husbands, get out of here. So you ask yourself, it's a funny story, but then you ask yourself, wait a minute, what? Rava couldn't control himself? He couldn't just wait till later day? I mean, Rava, the kadosh, Rava couldn't control himself? This is when a person needs to understand that there is a mitzvah, but there's also a physical need. A woman that understands both is a woman that can achieve holiness herself. A man that understands both is a man that can achieve both. People that don't will fail at both. Now, our Torah tells us in Sefer Bereshit, chapter 3, verse 16, that in the verse, V'al ishach teshukatech, v'hu imshalbach, that your craving, Hashem says to Chava, your craving shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu instituted the rule in nature that the man will naturally desire intimacy more than his wife. Not that she won't, but simply he would desire it more naturally, and he would be the one that would entice the woman to desire intimacy. And this is the reason why women aren't supposed to say clearly to their husband that they want intimacy. Hey, come on, you want to go to upstairs? Like, people like that? No, this is not appropriate behavior. So how would the woman tell her husband? She has to hint to him. Different ways, different modest behavior, whether it's a hug or it's holding his hand, different ways, without saying it clearly with her mouth. Gemara says it's a very, there has to be some type of, she has to be reserved. But at the same token, he is obligated to fulfill her need. But nonetheless, even though he's obligated to fulfill her need, she has to already take into account that there are going to be times that he will need it, and she's not necessarily desiring it. So does she have to do it anytime? if she wants to achieve holiness, and her husband is a decent human being, he's not a donkey, he treats her well, it would behoove her to do so. Why? The Zohar Kadosh says horrific things about women that withhold themselves from their husband, either by not going to the mikveh altogether, or simply just not being with their husband as a form of punishment of some kind. In fact, a wayward woman, a isha that's halachically that you're allowed to throw her out, is a woman that doesn't want to be her husband. We had a few cases like this where people will come to me and tell me that their wives don't want to go to the mikveh because they're simply not interested. I told them, go to the beit din and give her a get, and that's it. Get out. She doesn't get anything. Woman doesn't want to be with her husband, can't stay married to her. Can't stay married to her. But if she thinks she's being righteous by being abstinent here, she has to know that the Zohar Kadosh says, for her, abstinence and not being with her husband because she thinks she's achieving holiness by being abstinent, she will go to Gehenom forever. No different than someone that wastes seed. No different than a Mechalel Shabbat. Why? Because her abstinence is leading him to have foreign thoughts, wayward thoughts, and at times also wasted seed in the action. All of those sins will go to her. Meaning that here we see a living example of how a person that does not know what kedusha is thinks that their abstinence is a mitzvah and ends up going to Gehenom not for a week or a year, but forever. It's likely that Korach will come out of Gehenom before she would. And don't think that the husband is relieved by simply, he can do whenever he wants to do and how he wants to do. Absolutely not. If the husband forces his wife to be with him, it's considered nothing less than rape. There were a time, about 100, 150 years ago, righteous woman came to the beit din in Eretz Israel, well before the Zionists came, and she said, I want to get from my husband. Why you want to get? I just want to get, it's not good for me. I said, yeah, but we need a reason. Why you want to get from your husband? Shortly after the husband came, I want to get from my wife, same woman. Why you want to get? She's causing me to violate the Torah by being with a nidah. This righteous woman is causing you to be with her when she's nidah. So they knew something's fishy here. This woman is tzadikah. She's afraid to say something. She's too shy to say the real reason. And this guy is like, what happens? What do they find out? After questioning and this and so on, they find out that this animal, this guy, he's with his wife whenever he wants, and he does it in a way that's not for procreation. It's called shelo kedarko, not in the way of for procreation, which causes her to bleed profusely as a result of his actions. And this fool thinks, he thought that it's coming from the uterus, this blood, not realizing that it's from his animal behavior. What do you think the beit din did? They beat the hell out of him, punished him severely, and got him to do tshuva. But that's at the time when the beit din had real strength. Today you can't do stuff like that. You beat somebody up, you go into jail. But the point is that a man that forces his wife against her will has a very, very serious problem. On the other hand, he wants to be abstinent. No, I want to be abstinent. If your wife wants to be with you and you're not with her, you are a sinner. Every single second she desires and you're not with her, intentionally, you're a sinner. So a person needs to know that there is a line that needs to be drawn, and a person needs to know it, needs to understand it. So what is Chassidut really? In chapter 18 of the Mesilat Yesharim, he says, the virtue of Chassidut, requires extensive clarification. Numerous customs and outlooks that are accepted by many people go by the name of Chassidut, when in reality these are merely the outer shells of Chassidut, without its comprehensiveness, its coherence, and its effectiveness. He says that these people have given piety, have given Chassidut a bad name among the general populace, and particularly the intelligent among them. Meaning every time they say some mumbo jumbo that doesn't make any sense, like God needs you, or no one suffers, all types of things, people say, well, this doesn't make any sense. He says people that have a brain, they don't like Chassidut anymore because of these idiots. Everything that doesn't make any sense, they say, no, you don't understand because you don't understand Chassidut. Says the Mesilat Yesharim. No, it's not that he doesn't understand Chassidut. It's that you're not teaching Chassidut. You're not teaching Chassidut. You're teaching craziness, and you're calling it Chassidut. So, the Mesilat Yesharim already 300 years ago dealt with this problem, is that Chassidut, most people don't even know what it is, don't even know what piety is, what Chassidut is. It says the general populace already think that Chassidut goes hand in hand with empty values, or with things that are contrary to reason and intelligence. And they believe that this is so since Chassidut seems to consist entirely of the recitation of many supplications, lengthy confessions, exaggerated wailings and prostrations, and strange, deadly mortifications such as ablutions in ice and snow and the like. What they don't realize is that although some of these practices are necessary for Baalei Teshuva, and some are appropriate for the acquisition of abstinence, nonetheless, the virtue of Chassidut is not based on any of them. The best of these customs could at most be an adjunct to Chassidut. Here we see, Rabotai, that the Mesilat Yesharim is telling us that if you think that being completely abstinent and just doing all of these things, that's what's going to make you a Chassid, you simply don't know what Chassidut is. There is certain things that a person needs to do. There are certain things that a person is forbidden to do. Anytime a person learns what Chassidut really is, he'll see how far the world really is from it. And I'm not talking about the people that are secular, that are far from it. Now he continues, it says the nature of piety itself, the nature of Chassidut itself, is very profound and difficult to grasp. It rests on the foundations of great wisdom and thorough rectifications of one's conduct. And as such, it's worthy of pursuit by those who are wise of heart. For it's only given to the wise to truly attain it. And it says in Pirkei Avot, chapter 2, Mishnah 5, an ignorant person will never become a Chassid. So now, what is the main thing that a person needs to know? He says, we'll explain the concept step by step. He says, the root of Chassidut is epitomized in a statement of our sages in Gemara Masechet Brachot, page 17a. Praiseworthy is the man whose labor is in the Torah and who pleases his Creator. What this means is that the mitzvot that are binding on all of Israel are already known, and a delimitation of their duties is known, yet he who truly loves the Creator, may his name be blessed, will consciously try to restrict his observance to a mere fulfillment of the well-known duties that obligate the whole of Israel in general. Rather, what will occur will be similar to the reaction of a son who loves his father. If his father were to just barely express his desire for something, the son would still do everything within his power to satisfy his wish. And although his father may have expressed himself only once, in a half sentence, this son would not have had any difficulty in understanding his father's desire, including the unstated parts of it. For through his own reasoning he understands that pleases his father, and he needs not to wait until his father instructs him more explicitly and repeats the words. So in essence, Chassidut is in essence you're going above and beyond what's required of you. But above and beyond doesn't mean you are restricting yourself from everything. Because if, like I said before, and the Mesilat Yesharim says this in a different place, if your restriction will lead to sin, it is not Chassidut anymore. It's not Chassidut anymore. So now, here we see that the Ramban is trying to address all of these issues. In the beginning of it, we're only going to read a few lines. The Ramban writes in the foreword, "May Hashem bless you and keep and preserve you, my brother, being as you are eager and diligent like me to research the ways by which you can realize and be cognizant of awe of Hashem, and thereby will be able to go in the paths of the radiant light towards the face of the pure menorah, so that you will be saved from the paths of darkness that causes the blind who have never seen the resplendent light which warns one from stumbling." So here, in essence, the first few lines, the Rambam gives us a slight message, or a big message. He says the first step of achieving holiness in a home is desire to do more than the average. Desire to do more than the average. If a person is simply looking to coast and just be another little piggy that eats whatever is given to it, this series will have nothing to do with them. This book will not connect to them. If a person is looking just do a little bit, if it's an easy mitzvah, I'll do it. Again, this series may not have much to do with them, but it actually may encourage them to do more when they realize what they get as a result. But if a person already has an inclination to serve their Creator the best they can, just the inclination, maybe they may not even be a Chassid right now, they might not even be close to being a Chassid right now, but they have an inclination, they have a desire to be the best, then this series could give them the path to get there, the journey to get there, not just in their servitude of Hashem on a day-to-day basis, but even the servitude of Hashem in their marriage, servitude of Hashem in bringing children to the world. Because certainly we all know that when a person is promiscuous, nothing good comes out of it. There's so many people out there crying bitter tears over the horrible children they brought to the world, the horrible education they gave their children, but it's all crying over spilled milk. You sent your kid to the wrong school, your kid became a homosexual as a result of the friends he met. You allowed your kid complete freedom as far as watching TV and playing video games. Your kid doesn't want to pray and doesn't even believe in God according to him. You allowed your daughter to simply pick her own clothes. Your daughter simply doesn't want to wear clothes. She wants to walk around like one of these people that's pretty much doesn't realize that clothes are a necessity to humanity. When a person allows all the freedoms and all the limitations to be broken, the end result is a life full of tragedy. Either it's tragedy because it leads to a lot of promiscuity, disease, divorce, horrible anxiety, broken hearts repeatedly, addictions, physical, psychological addictions. Literally a horrible, horrible life. Horrible, horrible life, to say the least. On the other hand, when a person reserves themselves, already they see that they're walking a different path and have different issues that are perhaps not always similar to the rest of society. Most of their issues of society are foreign to them. And the more a person reserves themselves, the more they realize that their life perhaps is not as dramatic as other people's. Each person still has their issues, but they don't have what they see on TV. They don't have what they see in the streets. They don't have that stuff. What the Ramban and our holy sages are bringing to us is neither that nor that. Rather, the Ramban is telling you, you want to go b'derech hamelech, in the way of God, the way of the king. This is the way. It seems hard at first because it's so foreign to society, to the normal mentality, that you require a certain behavior, a certain thought process. But when a person understands that when they are fulfilling the act, they're literally creating holy neshamot. Neshamot that they actually may have the merit to raise as their own children, or it will be created holy neshamot that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will send to different parts of the world. That certainly will bring a lot of nachat to Hashem and a lot of good to the world altogether. That an act that the average person simply doesn't think about more than just physically, their physical desire, that the second that they climax, they simply are looking for the exit as soon as possible, to an act that not only is no less pleasing physically, but is actually more pleasing, not just physically, but also spiritually and mentally. Now again, you cannot expect the two to be with the same effort. It's not a world of difference, meaning it's not necessarily like you have to climb some type of mountain, and it's not some extreme like people think, oh, you have to reserve yourself and only be together once a year. No, it's not. It's normal. It's just that there are certain things that a person needs to take into account. And the first step that a person must do is desire to do more to serve Hashem. Even in a place that they never thought was relevant. Even in a place that all they know about is what, unfortunately, the majority of people know about. When a person desires to serve Hashem, even there, that's a person that's opening a door for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to enter their lives in their most personal matters, the most intimate matters, and as a person that literally will never regret it, simply because they are now officially beginning their journey to become holy. Be'ezrat Hashem, this series will have an extraordinary amount of insights and chidushim that will bring light to the world, create an extraordinary amount of holiness in the world, beautiful neshamot, beautiful marriages, entice those that are single to get married, and those that have limited their own ability to bring children to the world, help them desire to bring more. Entice those that think it's okay to simply be an animal, to perhaps desire to be a servant of Hashem, even while fulfilling their animalistic needs, because there's more to life than just that. Be'ezrat Hashem, this series will bring light to Judaism altogether, where anyone that sees it will know, now I know why Kadosh Baruch Hu said they are the chosen people. Now I know why the Kadosh Baruch Hu says they are the holy people. Be'ezrat Hashem, this series will distinguish our holy Torah from all writings, whether ancient or modern, in such a fashion that your average person, even if they still have doubts and all of their questions are unanswered, will see such benefits from these teachings that they'll simply say, it's enough for me. I want to be part of it. And Be'ezrat Hashem, each and every single one of you will come back again, learn with us, but next time, you'll not only have more enthusiasm, but you also have at least 10 of your friends to join us, to learn together, and get holier and better as people and as servants of Hashem. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen v'Amen. Shalom v'chai everybody. Very happy to announce a major event coming up in Eretz Yisrael. This event is going to be unlike any other we've done as an organization. Last year we had a group of young guys that completed the entire Shas, Bavli, and the Mishnayot in a single year. This year we're going to have the entire foundation of the oral Torah completed in a single night. Our own dear Ephraim and other Talmidim of the organization. In a single night we'll have the completion of the Shas Bavli, Shas Mishnayot, the Zohar Kadosh, Zohar Chadash, Tikkun Zohar, and the Shulchan Aruch. Years and years of toil, lots of effort is coming to fruition, and in a single night, all of it will be completed to sanctify Kadosh Baruch Hu's name. This is going to be a night where many Rabbanim, many Tzaddikim will be joining us at this event. There'll be hundreds and hundreds of people at the event in Eretz Yisrael, including the Rishon LeZion, Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, of course, our own very dear Rabbi Ephraim Kachlon. I myself will also be joining, coming to Eretz Yisrael for the first time in many years, to join this monumental event, this monumental Kiddush Hashem, in order to sanctify Kadosh Baruch Hu's name, to show Him how much we love His Torah, how dedicated we are to His Torah, and to be able to, Be'ezrat Hashem, give chizuk to Am Yisrael in another way.
בעזרת השם, ארגון בעזרת השם מתעתד לעשות כנס גדול, שם יהיה סיום על עיקרי התורה שבעל פה, שזה סיום כל התלמוד בבלי, סיום כל השישה סדרי משנה, סיום כל הזוהר הקדוש ותיקוני הזוהר, וסיום כל השולחן ערוך. בדרך כלל לוקח זמן כדי לסיים את כל הספרים הללו, 30 שנה, 40 שנה, ובסייעתא דשמיא הארגון בעזרת השם עושה את הכנס לכל כלל ישראל. כולם מוזמנים.
We're looking forward for this event. We're also looking forward to seeing some of you that are going to be joining us. There are going to be some sponsorship opportunities for anyone that wants to be able to be a part of it. And of course, there'll be a opportunity for any of you that want to join us, one way or the other. Last but not least, there will also be a raffle that we'll be announcing very soon for anyone that wants to join the raffle and also be able to do Kiruv at the same time. The winner of the raffle will win a flight ticket to Eretz Yisrael and be able to join us at the event. So please look out for more news. Looking forward to seeing you at this event. And Be'ezrat Hashem, Naaseh v'Natzliach.